Welcome to the Crypto Teacher. And guys, I come back with that second video just to make you think. And this is on Operation Northwoods. Of course, we have 9/11 and people say, oh, it's a conspiracy and whatnot. But we know by documents, Operation Northwood was real. And even in the documents, guys, it says that they can fake people's deaths, fake planes. I mean, everything is fake. So we have to understand Hollywood is there for a reason. Because the fact is that people don't know what's real and what's not real. So the fact is that if you're not investigating, that's why we have no more investigative reporting. If you're not investigating and you don't take the time, you personally don't take the time and research, you don't know what's real and what's not. But y'all enjoy the video.
And yet this has happened time and time again in history. Most of it isn't documented, but there are certain cases where it was explicitly stated. And one of those places is with Operation Northwoods.
So we thought we would look at this document for Operation Northwoods. It was declassified because the problem with people forgetting history or failing to research history or failing to look into history is they forget these things ever happened, and then history continues to repeat and people act like they have no idea why. I hear debunkers all the time when these major false flags happen. They make these arguments like, how could large numbers of people lie about their identity? How could there be large numbers of crisis actors? How could they have fake funerals with fake victims? How could any of that stuff ever happen?
How could so many people keep a secret?
Exactly. And you hear that over and over and over every time there's a major event that has all the hallmarks of being a false flag. Well, if you go back and look at this particular document, they outline all of this stuff in print. How could those things happen? Well, just ask the Joint Chiefs of Staff after their meeting in March 1962, where they laid out exactly how it could happen, all in print, right there.
It should be damning. It should be enough to shut this stuff down, but not enough people seem to know about it.
And we just thought, I know a lot of people are familiar with this document, a lot of people have seen it, but if you haven't seen it in a while or you've never seen it, we thought this was a perfect time to go back and really analyze this document thoroughly. I'm going to leave a link in the description so that you guys can go download it and look at it for yourselves. But I think when you look back at some of the things that have happened over the last 20 years especially, and then you reread this document or read it for the first time, a lot of things are going to start to make sense. This is the Memorandum for the Secretary of Defense dated 13 March 1962, subject, Justification for U.S. Military Intervention in Cuba, TS, I guess, top secret. It says, number 1, the Joint Chiefs of Staff have considered the attached memorandum for the Chief of Operations Cuba Project, which responds to a request of that office for brief but precise description of pretexts which would provide justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba.
He just launched an invasion on a small country. Yes, but he was justified.
Number 2, the Joint Chiefs of Staff recommend that the proposed memorandum be forwarded as a preliminary submission suitable for planning purposes. It is assumed, by the way, that there will be similar submissions from other agencies. So this isn't just the Joint Chiefs. This is agencies, plural. And that these inputs will be used as a basis for developing a time-phased plan. Sounds very serious. And then it says, it is recommended this responsibility for both overt and covert military operations be assigned the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And then it's signed by Lemnitzer. Then it goes on to say, note by the secretaries to the Joint Chiefs of Staff on Northwoods, a report on the above subject is submitted for consideration by Joint Chiefs. So this is their report. Then you have this document that's been attached, which is a very poor photocopy. They always do that, especially on things where they really don't want people to actually read it. Like they couldn't make another photocopy that you can that's actually legible. It's kind of ridiculous. But what this says is that, number 1, this is note by the secretaries. Number 1, at their meeting on 13 March 1962, the Joint Chiefs of Staff approved the recommendations in paragraph 8 of JCS 1969/321. But so they approved the recommendations in paragraph 8. So they were moving forward with this. And then they've got something down here totally blacked out that they don't want you to see even now. Then it goes on to say, this is a report by the Department of Defense and Joint Chiefs of Staff representative on the Caribbean Survey Group. If you just heard the name Caribbean Survey Group, you wouldn't even think twice about what that means. To the Joint Chiefs of Staff on Cuba Project Top Secret. This one is dated 9 March 1962, just a couple days before. So they were moving pretty fast as far as the government's concerned on this. Now it's going to identify the problem, quote unquote. As requested by Chief of Operations Cuba Project, the Joint Chiefs of Staff are to indicate brief but precise description of pretexts which they consider would provide justification for U.S. military intervention in Cuba. And there's an asterisk down here, and it says, Memorandum for General Craig from Chief of Operations Cuba Project, Subject Operation Mongoose, dated 5 March 1962, which is on file.
And Operation Mongoose was a plan to infiltrate and foster a rebellion against Cuba and ultimately to overthrow the government and establish a new one. So it was everything from sabotage on up that they could utilize. And this is in classic Hegelian dialectic fashion. It's problem, reaction, solution in a textbook format. They openly tell you what conclusion they want to reach, the justification for war with Cuba, and they're looking for a reason. They're looking for the pretext that will make that justifiable, some sort of event.
A lot of these pages in the middle are just repeating the general idea of they want justification for intervention, they need to come up with a plan, this is the way they're going to do it, and they repeat a lot of stuff over and over. So I'm just going to skip forward to the meat of the document, which is Appendix A. This, if you haven't seen it yet, it will blow your mind that they put this in print, and it will make you question, for all the things that have happened since then, how many documents like this have they yet to declassify that are laying out things that have happened. And a lot of the things that are in this appendix, very similar things have happened, and it definitely makes you wonder. It starts out with a parenthetical about how the courses of action which follow are preliminary submissions suitable for planning purposes. They are arranged neither chronologically nor in ascending order. And then it goes on to repeat that this is going to be part of their single integrated time phase plan for justification, blah, blah, blah. Number 1, since it would seem desirable to use legitimate provocation as the basis for U.S. military intervention, not that I'm really sure that any of this is legitimate, but whatever, in Cuba, a cover and deception plan to include requisite preliminary actions such as has been developed in response to Task 33C could be executed as an initial effort to provoke Cuban reactions. Harassment plus deceptive actions to convince the Cubans of imminent invasion would be emphasized. Our military posture throughout execution of the plan will allow a rapid change from exercise to intervention if Cuban response justifies. So that sounds a lot to me like going from a drill to live.
And this is the military and the government admitting how deceptive they are about these events. Time and again, there's calls to patriotism. There's accusations for anyone who dares to question events. And there's false logical fallacies put forward to obscure any debates and questions. But this is a government practicing deception. How can they not be questioned?
Then it goes on to say, a series of well-coordinated incidents will be planned to take place in and around Guantanamo to give genuine appearance of being done by hostile Cuban forces. Because nobody's out there who's going to know, except the people that are all in on it. And then it says, A, incidents to establish a credible attack. I think they should have put credible in quotes, don't you? Not in chronological order. 1, start rumors. Many, use clandestine radio. So there's your propaganda. Number 2, land friendly Cubans in uniform, quote, over the fence, end quote, to stage an attack on the base.
Capture friendly Cuban saboteurs and start riots near the baseman gate with friendly Cubans. All of these being friendly Cubans. You could substitute crisis actors. You could substitute CIA contractors. But the point is, it's not legitimate.
It's not real.
And again and again.
Blow up ammunition inside the base, start fires, burn aircraft on airbase, sabotage, lob mortar shells from outside of base into base, some damage to installations, capture assault teams approaching from the sea or vicinity of Guantanamo City, capture militia group which storms the base, sabotage a ship in the harbor, large fires, naphthalene, sink ship near harbor entrance, conduct funerals for mock victims, maybe in lieu of 10. So all those people who say they would never do that with the fake victims, and I know someone who knows someone whose mailman's grandma's cousin's friend of a friend's brother's teacher's neighbor's pet's friend was down there, and so it definitely happened. Let me just point you out to number 11 here, where they talk about conducting funerals for fake victims. That's what they say right here in print that they would do. So therefore, how can we not question it? If something doesn't look right and it doesn't pass the sniff test, why are we supposed to take away our own logic, our own critical thought process, our own brain, and just throw that out the window and replace it with official narratives and mainstream media propaganda?
Why would anyone be okay with them playing with our heartstrings and toying with our emotions?
Exactly. It says it right there. Then it goes on to say, United States would respond by executing offensive operations to secure water and power supplies, destroying artillery and mortar emplacements which threaten the base. C. Commence large-scale United States military operations. Then it goes on to say, number 3, a quote-unquote remember the Maine incident could be arranged in several forms.
And of course, the Maine was the ship that was sunk in Cuba back in 1898, and it was pretty clearly a provocated fake event. But it was used to sell the public on the U.S.-Spain War, the Spanish War over Cuba. It was used to blame Maine, and William Randolph Hearst and others basically dreamed this thing up and sold it in the papers through false pictures and false stories.
And they go on to say they could blow up a U.S. ship in Guantanamo Bay and blame Cuba. When have we ever heard of them using an attack on a ship as a provocation and justification for war? Gee, I don't know. Vietnam, anybody?
Lusitania, World War I. It happens over and over again. The USS Cole with Osama bin Laden before the 9/11 attacks. Over and over again.
And then it says we could blow up a drone vessel, an unmanned drone vessel, anywhere in Cuban waters. We could arrange to cause such incident in the vicinity of Havana or Santiago as a spectacular result of Cuban attack from the air or sea or both. The presence of Cuban planes or ships merely investigating the intent of the vessel could be fairly compelling evidence that the ship was taken under attack. The nearness to Havana or Santiago would add credibility, especially to those people that might have heard the blast or have seen the fire. The U.S. could follow up with an air-sea rescue operation covered by U.S. fighters to quote-unquote evacuate remaining members of the non-existent crew. So they're going to tell everyone that they attacked people, soldiers, our soldiers, the ones that they always walk all over. They're going to make it seem like a lot of them were harmed when they didn't even exist. They're not real.
Well, and how different is an exercise to practice for the eventuality from pretending that a search and rescue is taking place after a fake or provocated event?
But they're going to take it a step further by placing casualty lists in U.S. newspapers to cause a helpful wave of national indignation. So they're going to print the names of the non-existent dead soldiers from the drone ship that was fake attacked outside of Cuba.
To toy with emotions and get the American public on their side.
Then it goes on to say they could develop a communist Cuban terror campaign in the Miami area, other Florida cities, or even in Washington. The terror campaign could be pointed at Cuban refugees seeking haven in the United States. We could sink a boatload of Cubans en route to Florida, real or simulated. They don't care if it's real human beings they're murdering. They don't. So, hoax or no hoax, they'll kill people or not. Whatever you want. We could foster attempts on lives of Cuban refugees in the United States, even to the extent of wounding in instances to be widely publicized. Exploding a few plastic bombs in carefully chosen spots, the arrest of Cuban agents and the release of prepared documents substantiating Cuban involvement also would be helpful in projecting the idea of an irresponsible government. They're going to set off plastic bombs. They're going to foster attempts on lives. They're going to sink boatloads of people, real or simulated.
And this whole contrived terror campaign was carried out with the help of NATO in Europe under Operation Gladio. This was done to neutralize their opposition.
Then it goes on to say, a Cuban-based Castro-supported, quote-unquote, filibuster could be simulated against a neighboring Caribbean nation in the vein of the 14th of June invasion of the Dominican Republic. We know that Castro is backing subversive efforts clandestinely against Haiti, Dominican Republic, Guatemala, and Nicaragua. I'm pretty sure a few of those also had CIA coups, but whatever. At present, and possible others. These efforts can be magnified and additional ones contrived for exposure. Contrived for exposure.
Contrived for Exposure.
By Calvin Klein.
Contrived for Exposure, starring the dictator of this episode.
It sounds like a Lifetime.
Days of Our Lives.
I know. It sounds like a Lifetime Network movie starring Dick Cheney.
How many eyes take this stuff for granted and believe what they're told on the news when they're admitting that they contrive these events for exposure so that the public can see them?